information session on the Workforce Housing Development Program. My name is Sarah Bunn, and I am the Workforce Housing Program and Multifamily Engagement Manager for the agency. In today's webinar, we will review important details of the program to keep in mind when you're putting together applications. And then I would just want to point out that a recorded version of this presentation, as well as the slides, will be posted on our website for reference after the webinar, and we'll probably have that up within a couple of days. So some of you may already be familiar with Minnesota Housing's work, but for those of you that are not, this is our mission statement. And next I have up today's agenda, and that includes a review of the purpose of the program and some key program features, a brief overview of how many applications will be reviewed and scored, highlights of a few important responsibilities of the recipients, including the importance of understanding contract obligations before requesting and committing to funds, an overview of the application timeline, and finally we'll have some time to go over any questions you may have at the end. So let's start by going over the purpose of the Workforce Housing Development Program. The purpose of this program is to help finance qualified expenditures of project-specific costs resulting in the direct development of market-rate residential properties in order to address the lack of workforce housing in Greater Minnesota. Funds will be awarded through a request for proposal process, also referred to as an RFP, to communities with proven job growth and demand for workforce rental housing. I want to make you aware of some of the key program features to keep in mind when you are working on your application. The program guide provides a more detailed definition for your reference, but eligible applicants are generally small to mid-sized communities in Greater Minnesota. Funds cannot be awarded directly to developer, and Minnesota Housing will not review applications submitted by ineligible recipients. Once awarded, applicants will enter into an agreement with the developer listed in the application to award funds to the project identified. Applicants can award funds to the developer as a grant or a deferred loan. And if applicants award funds as a deferred loan, the terms must be equal to or more favorable than the terms they receive from Minnesota Housing. And then finally, Minnesota Housing does not provide contract templates for applicants to use with developers. But if you have questions about that, I would suggest that you look at some of the previous awards that are listed on our website and encourage you to reach out and network with other cities that have been awarded in the past. Okay, applicants should not request workforce housing funds in an amount greater than 25% of the total development cost of the project. Applicants must submit a project workbook that demonstrates the funds would not exceed the statutory threshold. This is an application threshold requirement, and Minnesota Housing will not review applications in which requests exceed 25% of the total development cost. So we really just don't have any flexibility on that since it is written in statute. Awarded recipients must begin construction within 12 months of signing their contract. And then construction completion must occur prior to the end of the 3-year contract term. So commitment of matching funds. Applicants must have a commitment of matching funds of $1 for every $2 requested from Minnesota Housing. Applicants must submit a government resolution that states where the matching funds will come from. For example, a local unit of government, business, nonprofit, or a combination of these sources. The application deadline is January 11th this year, so please make sure to be thoughtful about the approvals required to obtain resolutions, and otherwise you just need to make sure that you get on the council agenda or whatever you need to do to make sure that you can get that piece approved. I'd say that's kind of usually the most important time sensitive piece regarding these applications. And then of course with this all happening kind of over the holidays, you know, I know many times the meetings get altered around the holidays, so just make sure to start planning for getting that resolution approved now. Matching funds do not have to be a cash investment in the project. They can also be in-kind donations or a combination of in-kind donations and cash donations. So examples would be like tax increment financing or TIF, tax abatement. We see land donations, partial land donations. Sometimes cities will donate or waive fees. All of that can be counted towards the matching funds. And definitely encourage you to get creative on that. I would just say that if there's something that I haven't mentioned, you can make sure to reach out to me and run it past me first to make sure it's okay. It's important to remember that matching funds cannot come from a developer or any entity affiliated with the developer. And then lastly, previously incurred project costs do not count towards the match. Right, application selection. So this section I am going to discuss threshold requirements that applicants must meet in order to move to the scoring phase. Applicants must demonstrate that they meet 5 threshold requirements. These threshold requirements are statutory. The next few slides will go over each requirement in more detail. But essentially, applicants must demonstrate that they are an eligible project area under this program, demonstrate that the rental vacancy rate in the area is at or below 5%, and that it has been for at least the prior 2-year period. Applicants must demonstrate that funds will be used for statutory qualified expenditures and that there is the required commitment of matching funds. Applicants must also demonstrate community need for the proposed project and provide a letter of support from a local business. And then finally, the amount of funds requested cannot exceed 25% of the total development costs. So, eligible project area. Applicants must demonstrate that they are one of 3 eligible project areas. So, what do we mean by eligible project area? This term is from the Workforce Housing Statute. Essentially, eligible project area and eligible applicants or recipients mean the same thing. Eligible applicants are typically small to mid-sized communities in greater Minnesota. We mostly see cities applying, but there are a couple other ways you can apply if you read over the statute in greater detail. And any questions on that, feel free to reach out to me. We do have a city list posted on our website that provides all the cities in Minnesota that meet the population preference of 30,000 or fewer residents. In most cases, small to mid-sized cities can refer to that eligible city list that we have posted on our website to determine if they are eligible. If you are listed on the eligible city list, you do not need to worry about the two other project area options. If you are not listed on the eligible city list, you must demonstrate in your application that you meet one of the other two criteria. And then the application checklist has more detailed information regarding what supporting documentation you would need to submit in those instances that you're not on that city list. If you are not listed on the list, you must demonstrate in your application that you meet one of the two other criteria. I think kind of talked about this a little bit, but you can do that by providing a map of the project area and the population of the area, or by providing documentation that the area is served by a joint county-city economic development authority. And applicants only need to meet one of the eligible definitions. Rental vacancy rates. To demonstrate that you meet the rental vacancy requirements, you'll need to submit a signed certification form stating that the average vacancy rate has been at or below 5% for a minimum of 2 years. So this is basically just a self-certification that the applicant, which would be the city or the community, submits and certifies to that vacancy rate. And then I also just want to mention that we do not require a market study or a housing study to support this vacancy rate. However, I also want to note that if you do have a market study or a housing study, I would love to see that submitted as part of your application. Again, not a requirement of the application. Qualified expenditures. To meet the qualified expenditure threshold requirement, you will also have to certify at application that if awarded funds, those funds will result in the direct development of market rate residential rental properties. Examples of eligible uses of funds include acquisition of property, construction of improvements, and related financing costs. Matching funds. As we discussed earlier, applicants must have a commitment of matching funds of $1 for every $2 requested. As part of that requirement, you will submit a government resolution that must state where the matching funds will come from. For example, a local unit of government, a business, nonprofit, or a combination of those. Matching funds do not have to be a cash investment in the project. We've talked about that. They can also be in-kind donations. And then once again, remember that matching funds cannot come from the developer or an entity affiliated with the developer. And then once more, project costs, previously incurred project costs, do not count towards the match. Letter of support. Applicants also need to submit at least one letter from the local business that employs a minimum of 20 full-time employees. Applicants can submit more than one letter from more than one business if the total number of full-time employees between all businesses equals 20 or more. That is perfect. And I also encourage you, if you have multiple employers, to submit more than one letter. And then finally, we do provide a template letter on our website for you to use if you need it. Okay, so moving on to application selection and selection criteria. Applicants who meet all threshold requirements will be scored using 6 scoring categories. And I'm just going to kind of walk through those. We don't actually publish the scoring for this RFP or ask you to score your own project. So I usually just try to do kind of an overview of what we're looking for with each of these different criteria. So the first category is readiness to proceed. That is worth 20 points. And we look at 3 things for that category. First one is proof of site control. So you will want to have a purchase agreement or contract that extends through the board date. So that should be, I would just have make sure your purchase agreement or contract extends through the end of April of 2022, since we plan to go to board this year to select projects in, it should be the 3rd week of April at the board meeting. Second component is zoning and approvals. Basically, we're just looking here to make sure that everything's ready to go and approved except for the building permits. And there's actually a question on the narrative and application where we ask about that. So just make sure you're thinking about what I'm saying here as far as what we're looking for scoring purposes when you fill that out. And then the third component of readiness to proceed is secured financing. So we're basically looking to see that you have as much of the funding committed to the project as possible. So 100% of the funding committed if possible, and all of that needs to be backed up by commitments. So for like your mortgage or your first mortgage, you can have like a soft type commitment from the lender, and you just need to make sure that includes, the amount of the loan and the terms of the loan on it. And then for any other sources that you are using in the financing and the capital stack, you need to also have a commitment for those as well. So if you have any sort of like equity or general partner cash or any other cash coming into the project, we need to see like some sort of, just have them type up a commitment of sorts, stating the terms and the interest rate and all of that stuff within that letter, and that will do. Moving on to market characteristics, which is worth 15 points. 2 components to this category. The first is the share of market rate units. 100% market rate units will score better in this program, since this is a market rate program. As most of you probably know, we do allow a portion of the units to have income or rent restrictions, but again, it's a market rate program, and what we're really looking for in this program is 100% market rate. And then the second component of market characteristics is the number of units. So in this category, smaller projects are going to score better. And I think just with this entire program and with the scoring, just keep in mind that this program was really developed to prioritize smaller cities and smaller projects. So, if you come in with a 70-unit project, that is just not going to score as well as, let's say, a 20-unit project or a 30-unit project. So just kind of keep that in mind regarding this program and scoring. Next category is leverage, and there are 25 points available for that category. And what we're looking for here is basically the funding request as a percentage of the total development costs. So you can request up to 25% of the total development costs, but less than 25% will get additional points. I think generally speaking, with the increase in construction costs that we've seen over the last few years and labor shortages, I've been telling people to just try not to get hung up on that scoring category. I think, most of the applications that I've seen the last few years and most of the applications that I expect to come in this year are requesting the full 25%. Because honestly, that's, many times what you need to get these projects done. But if you are in a situation where you have other funding sources available or what have you, you will get additional points for not requesting that entire 25%. Next category is community size, and there are 15 points available in this category. The population of the project area, this program targets 30,000 or less, but 5,000 or less will score the best in this program. Like I stated a few minutes ago, this program was really developed to prioritize and target small communities and small projects. So again, just smaller communities are going to score better than larger ones. Located in an opportunity zone is the next category. That's worth 3 points. And all we're looking for there is just either you're located in an opportunity zone or you're not. And then finally, geographic preference, which is a new scoring category this year. We are just looking for you to be outside the metro area as defined by section 473.121, subdivision 2 of statute. So if you want to dig into that further, you can pull up the program guide or any number of the materials that we have out there, and we link the workforce housing statute in several of them. I think most of you will be fine. There's just some kind of fringe type metro areas that are that don't fit perfectly into statute. So, but if you're on the list, the city list that is on our website, you should be fine. So that is pretty much the overview of scoring that I give everyone and what we look at. Always happy to answer more questions on that or go over it in detail if you want to set up an appointment with me outside of the webinar. Okay, so let's talk about opportunity zones. This is basically a new community development program established by Congress in the Tax Cut and Jobs Act of 2017 to encourage long-term investments in low-income and urban communities nationwide. Governors designate eligible census tracts as opportunity zones in their state. Minnesota currently has 128 census tracts for designation as opportunity zones. Investors receive tax deferrals when capital gains are reinvested in an opportunity fund. So that's not necessarily, a requirement of the program to go all in with that. But again, we're just looking to see whether you're in an opportunity zone or not. So Minnesota Housing, we're encouraging applicants with projects that will be in an opportunity zone to apply for workforce housing development resources, and additional points are being set aside for applicants with eligible projects located in an opportunity zone. Applicants who are interested and want to learn more should go ahead and visit BEAD's website. They have a lot of information that you can review there. This is actually a slide that outlines Minnesota's census tracts, and again, these are designated as opportunity zones. And this map is also available on BEAD's website. Responsibilities of recipients. Once selected for funding, applicants become recipients and agree to the terms outlined in the contract. There are a few responsibilities that I want to highlight in the next slides before you begin completing your application. So first of all, draft templates of the grant contract agreement and the deferred loan contract can be found on our website for your review. And again, you get to choose between either one of those. It's completely up to you. It's one of those situations some people ask me, like, how do I figure this out? I mean, really best case scenario is to discuss things internally at the city or within your community, and then reach out to the developer as well to discuss that. We definitely encourage you to review the contracts and become familiar with the expectations. As you're going through the application process, but then also for sure, if you are awarded funds, you'll want to definitely take a better look at those contracts. The contractual relationship is between Minnesota Housing and the city or community. We do not work directly with developers on this program at all, so keep that in mind. Applicants are expected to make sure their contract with the developer ensures compliance with their contract with Minnesota Housing. So again, like I stated earlier, you want to make sure to go over these contracts and make sure that everything that you put in your contract with the developer makes sense. Okay, continuing on the responsibilities, talking about construction timelines. As I mentioned earlier, construction must start within 12 months of signing the contract and must be completed within the 3-year term. Recipients will need to make sure that the developer produces the amount of units outlined in the application within the construction timeline that is outlined in the contract. So whatever the unit is, the unit count is that you put in your application, we expect that those units are produced. If for some reason there's an issue with that or something needs to change, you need to reach out to me so we can discuss that. This information can all be found in Section 3 of the grant contract agreement and the deferred loan contract. And then talking about disbursement requests, recipients will submit disbursement requests and supporting due diligence items to receive the funding. That's of course after construction starts. I will talk more about the disbursement process shortly. And then this information can also be found in Section 4.2 of the grant contract agreement and Section 4.3 of the deferred loan contract. Okay, reporting. Recipients will be responsible for collecting information from the developer to satisfy annual reporting requirements. At a minimum, recipients will be monitored at project closeout, or basically construction completion. Recipients are expected to retain records for their award, and they need to maintain this for the length of the records retention period outlined in the contract. And this information is explained in Exhibit A of both contracts that are listed on our website. All right, compliance to local, state, and federal law. Recipients are responsible for making sure the developer and all parties involved comply with all local, state, and federal laws. This includes visibility requirements under Minnesota statute. That statute is 462A.34. And then this information can also be found in Exhibit A of the contract. Moving on to contracting and bidding. Recipients must competitively bid the project in accordance to the contract. Prevailing wage under Minnesota statute 116J.871 applies to this program. There are also some additional affiliated statute with prevailing wage. So when you dig into our program guide on our website, I encourage you to kind of click on all those affiliated links. And then you can also reach out to the Department of Labor for any additional questions there. The contracting, bidding, and prevailing wage requirements can be found in Section 4.4 of the grant contract agreement and Section 4.5 of the deferred loan agreement or contract as well. And applicants should consult with their legal staff with questions to help them determine how to comply with all of the laws. And just to note that Minnesota Housing staff does not provide legal advice or guidance. Moving on to the disbursement process, I'm just going to take a few minutes to talk about how this works. So funds for this program, if you are selected, will be dispersed in 3 increments. There will be an initial disbursement, a second disbursement, and then, and that second one is typically mid-construction, and then a final disbursement once construction is complete. Applicants will be able to receive up to 1/3 of their award at each disbursement. Applicants will complete a disbursement request form for every request. And recipients must satisfy all due diligence requirements prior to receiving a disbursement of funds. And I should also note, prior to receiving the initial disbursement, applicants will need to submit a commitment letter from the first mortgage lender that includes loan closing data. And then also just want to mention, as part of the final draw request, we require that the applicant certify construction completion and just kind of reconfirm budget numbers and things of that nature before closing everything out and receiving that final disbursement. Okay, so moving on to application timeline. I think most of you have probably looked at this already. Applications are due by 12 p.m. noon Central Standard Time on Tuesday, January 11th of 2022. Applicants will submit their completed applications via a secure upload tool. The link to the upload tool is in the application and can also be found on our website. Applications will be reviewed, scored, and presented to a selection committee in March, and will then be taken to an April board meeting. Awards will be announced then within a week of the board meeting. So again, we typically do our board meetings the 3rd Thursday of every month, but we do not yet have the 2022 agenda for board meetings set in stone yet, but it's likely to be that 3rd Thursday of the month. So now I'd just like to share our website information and one other resource that we have. After we're finished with the slides and the demonstration, I'll open up the presentation for any questions that you guys might have. So for information about the question and answer portion of the webinar, view the program FAQ that we have updated, including that it always includes kind of new information and questions that come up. Just a couple things to point out with regard to that. On the workbook or the project pro forma that you submit as part of the application, I will be underwriting and sizing the need for public subsidy. So make sure you explain any deviations from the underwriting assumptions that are in the workbook. A portion of the project's units may have rent restrictions, but this does include Minnesota Housing prior written consent. So you can refer to page 17 of the program guide for additional details on that. But if you do plan on submitting an application for a project that has rent restrictions, please do reach out to me and get prior approval on that. And then of course I have our website up here for you to find all the application materials. I just want to mention that we do have other funding resources, one of which is a first mortgage program, low and moderate income rental, also referred to as a LMIR, and that's available year round. We have construction and permanent financing available, and rent and income restrictions do apply to this program. So I have Karen Polito's name up on the screen and her email address. If you have any questions regarding that program, feel free to reach out to her directly. Okay. Now I have my contact information up on the screen. We have a general workforce email address, and then also my email address, which I'm sure many of you have at this point, and then also my direct phone number. And I know probably most of you on here I've talked to in the past, many of you I should say, but for those of you that have not talked to me, please feel free to reach out if you have any questions anytime on this program. I try to keep myself very accessible and welcome the opportunity to sit down and meet with anyone. With that, if you have any questions, feel free to type them into the chat or otherwise. And if not, if you don't want to share them on the webinar, feel free to shoot me a quick email or give me a call, and I would be happy to help you with anything else. All right, it doesn't look like we have any questions at this point, so thank you all for joining me. Really appreciate it, and I look forward to hopefully reviewing applications from all of you in early January. Thank you.
Sarah, we actually do have a question.
Oh,
if you pull your question box open.
Okay, yep. Let me see if I can figure that out. Oh, you know what? Okay, give me just 1 minute here to make this bigger.
Yep, and then we actually have somebody that raised their hand. Would you like me to call on people?
That would be fabulous. Thank you.
Okay, we'll start there. Jasmine, I have your phone unmuted if you'd like to ask your question. Oh, it looks like you're self-muted, so if you unmute yourself, then you can ask your question. Jasmine, you have yourself muted. If you have a question.
You hear me at all? Sorry.
There we go.
Yep, you're there.
Okay, I just raised my hand because that was my question in the chat, so just wanted to highlight that. The question is asking about scattered site, if that's a possibility for this.
Yes, scattered site is a possibility. I would probably want to learn a little bit more about your structure and how you're doing that, but yes, we have had scattered site projects apply and receive funding. I don't see really any problem with that unless there's something I don't know.
Okay.
But yeah, I would maybe just shoot me an email and maybe we can connect in a little bit more detail about your project if that's okay.
Okay, thank you so much.
Yeah, you're welcome. I do see a question, will there be another application deadline in 2021, or is this program available for applications once a year? Good question. So this program, we typically do an annual, or we have done an annual RFP for in the past. We were currently allocated funding of $4 million for this program for the biennium. And so that covers 2021 and 2022. This year, we have chosen to make all $4 million available in 2021 with this RFP. So with that being said, there is not likelihood that there will be funding available next year for this program. So there may not be an RFP in 2022. It may just be the 2021 RFP, but it just kind of really depends on if there's any additional funding that's put towards this program. But at this point, there isn't any available that we know of. So hopefully that answers that question.
We have someone that has their hand raised. Gail, you're self-muted. If you'd like to unmute yourself, you can ask your question.
Hi, this is Gail. I had the question in the chat box about how you would value TIF or land donation as a local match.
So we're not super picky about how you value TIF in this program. I mean, it would basically just be the face value. Is typically how I look at it. And then as far as land donation, I just need some way to value that land. Again, we're not super crazy about how we do that in this program, but you know, if you have a current appraisal, that is obviously fabulous. But I'm also willing to look at other things. You know, if you pull tax records, or you can provide some sort of broker's opinion with comps, that would work as well.
Okay. That helps me a lot. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Skip, we have you with your hand raised. I've unmuted your line. Go ahead and unmute yourself.
Yes, thanks, Sarah. Hey, a question in regards to the points under community size. You said that communities under 5,000 would score the most points. Is there a tiered point system for those 15 points? So is it 0 to 5,000 is 15 points, and 5,000 to 10,000 is 10 points? Or is there some mathematical reasons
Yeah,
how you apply those points?
There is a middle tier, yes.
And what would that be?
You know what, I would, this is Skip, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
You know what, I don't have that in front of me right now. I don't want to give you the wrong number, but I can email that out to you if that's helpful. But yes, there is a middle tier between the 30,000 and the 5,000.
Okay, thank you.
We have Jason. Have your line is unmuted. Feel free to unmute yourself. Jason, did you have a question? Oh, you know what? It looks like you're online on the website, so you probably don't have a microphone attached. So I would probably either plan to reach out to Sarah at a separate time, or quickly type in your question in the chat box.
I mean, for some reason, I'm not able to expand the question box. It's just being finicky. I don't know if you can read those. Like me to read them? Yeah, if you wouldn't mind.
Sure. Yeah, kind of a lot coming in. Did we talk to, so Jason has a question. This is probably the one that he typed in. How much weight is given to community size?
Geez, you guys are asking me a lot of scoring questions, which I feel like I'm not exactly prepared for. But Patty, could you do me a favor and unshare my screen, and then I can pull this stuff up?
Oh, for sure.
Would you mind?
Actually,
since I can't see the questions anyway.
You can actually unshare your own screen.
Oh, yes. Okay.
Yep, up in the webinar. Sorry, everybody. Let me just walk Sarah through this. Under the sharing option, there's a little button, and you can say pause.
Got it. Okay.
There you go. Yep, there you go.
Right. Hold tight, you guys, while I pull up my scoring stuff, and then I can answer both Skip's question and this current question as well, if you just give me a minute here.
Maybe we can, while you dig for the scoring, maybe I can ask you a question that's not scoring.
Yep, that's great.
Okay, what does market rate mean for rentals? We have a project that will produce units that are affordable to folks at 80% AMI. Would that qualify?
Yeah, so when we say market rate, basically what we're looking for with this program, or what we mean in this program, is that we do not want to see any rent or income restrictions on the projects like you would see in an affordable project. So with that being said, and I've had this discussion quite a bit lately, you know, one of the reasons that we've been able to do a market rate program, a market rate workforce program, is that in Greater Minnesota, many times what we would consider to be market rate rents and affordable rents are one and the same. So just kind of looking back a couple weeks ago, I took a look at some of the projects that have come in over the last couple years, and I would say rent-wise, what I'm seeing is that most of the rents that are being charged are actually around the 50 to 60% of income limits, or tax credit limits is, I guess, what I should say. And those are just what would be considered market rate in the different cities. It really kind of just depends on what city you're in. But again, it really comes down to not having income or rent restrictions on the project, and charging market rent, which many times is also considered to be more of an affordable rent. So if you're looking at 80% of AMI, then, and that is what you're seeing as market for the area that you're working in, then that is perfectly fine. Okay,
So I have a question. Oh, did you want to talk about that?
Yeah,
on the community side?
Community size, the weight, community size, that one is worth 15 points. So if you just kind of look at that in the grand scheme of all those points, and actually, I don't know if, Patty, could you share your screen and click back to that scoring side?
Yeah, do you remember what slide that is? Offhand?
I do not. But again, it's 15 points out of, and you know what, this information is also on the application narrative on our website on the second page. And then to discuss the second tier for community size is 5,001 to 30,000. And then anything above 30,000 is 0 points.
I'm not seeing I see selection criteria. I wouldn't know. I guess I don't know what screen. I'm sorry.
Oh, that's okay. I'll look right now.
We do have another question while you look.
It's slide 17.
It's slide what?
17.
Okay. Okay, you see it?
Yeah.
Okay. We have Brian asking a question. I have your line unmuted. Feel free to unmute yourself.
This is Brian, sorry. I was just looking to clarify on the 5,001 to 30,000. If there's 15 points total, I get beyond 30,000 at 0 points. And below 5,000 is 15 points.
Yep.
I was just trying to figure out what the breakdown is between those bookmarks.
It's just those three tiers. You either are less than 5,000 and you get 15 points, or you're 5,001 to 30,000 and you get 7 points.
Oh, 7 points. Okay. Okay.
And then above 30,000 is 0.
Got it. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Sarah, we have a question. This is kind of a general question about housing shortage and labor materials. So because of the housing material and labor shortage, is 3 years enough time? Do you predict that 3 years is enough time? Is that time frame flexible? We know some contractors are already a couple of years out.
Yeah, that's a great question. It is quite an interesting situation that we're in right now. I can definitely understand why that question is being asked. Yeah, there is some flexibility within this program. And just keep in mind that, you know, if you're in that situation, then the likelihood is that, you know, other people that are applying to this program are in that situation as well. So yes, we will work with you on that. You know, generally speaking, we want you to try to target and adhere to the timelines that I've gone over as far as construction starting within 12 months of signing the contract. And then that construction is completed within the 3-year time frame. You know, even with some of the complications regarding material shortages and labor shortages and that sort of a thing, I've been able to see many projects be able to get finished up. But, you know, again, it just kind of depends on what area you're in. So that would just be something that you would want to communicate with me on once you sign the contract. And you know, if ideally, we wouldn't have to request any extensions or things of that nature for this program, but you know, we are willing to do that if it's warranted and it makes sense. So you would just want to work with me so that your contract and agreement doesn't expire and that we can get it extended in time if that does become the case.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Do twin homes qualify as multifamily?
Yes. Twin homes do qualify as multifamily. I would just, word of caution, you know, the smaller unit or the smaller projects that you do like that, those type of units like duplexes or fourplexes or single family units, even as rentals, you know, you're just going to be looking at a higher per unit cost, number one. So I would just, you know, be aware of that. I don't always see those projects working out, partially due to the higher unit costs in this program, but then also with regard to attracting contractors right now and labor to be able to do those smaller projects. So if you can get that sort of a project done, I think that that's fabulous, but just be aware that I have seen some people having a little bit more difficulty getting those sort of projects done right now because of those 2 reasons.
Great. So just a quick follow-up to that then. So it's not just for multifamily, it's just that the single family homes and the smaller number of units would be a higher per unit cost.
Correct. Yeah, I mean, you can do single family homes as long as they're rental units within this program. It's just, yeah, the higher unit costs are, I definitely caution people when it comes to
that. Can you repeat what size communities point out the best?
Okay, so 5,000 or less is going to point out the best at 15 points. And then 5,001 to 30,000 will be 7 points. And above 30,000 is 0 points. And so I guess, you know, I know people kind of fixate on that scoring category. It really, really depends on what applications we get in on a year-to-year basis. I mean, we've in the past, I think, funded a project in Duluth, probably because there were not a lot of applications that year. Or it was, you know, larger cities that came in that year. But, if we have a year where we get a lot of smaller cities, those are definitely, assuming they can get points or as many points as possible in the other categories, those smaller cities are going to point better.
Thank you. Under contractual requirements, the comply with piece by providing voter registration services for its employees and for public served by the applicant. Can you expand on that requirement a little bit?
Let's see. Do you have the slides up still, Patty?
I do.
See if we can flip to that slide. So.
Sorry, do you know which one?
I'm looking. I think it's slide 23. And would you mind just reading the question one more time? I'm
sure.
Trying to
Under the contractual agreement or requirements, the comply with by providing voter registration services for its employees and for the public service served by the applicant. Can you expand on that requirement?
Okay, you know what, I am going to have you send me an email about that. I think you must actually have the contract pulled up right now. And I'm not as familiar with that requirement.
You probably don't need to have him contact you. During the webinar, we'll pull up this report and you can reach out individually to people.
That's great.
Yeah,
that's great.
We can follow up. Yep.
Send you further information on that.
The email tier point system, it sounds like a couple of people want that. So is there a way to email that out to the entire group, or is that a document that's going to be listed on the website for people to reference?
So you want that is not something that I have shared in the past beyond what we had in the slide. So I can for sure email out the information that's in the slide. And then I can check on if we are okay with sharing the exact breakdown at this point. That's something that I will have to do further research on. I mean, it's kind of something I've been thinking about through this program anyway, but we're just not set up to do that right now. So, but I can for sure email out the general slide information that we had up.
Sure. Our community is over 30,000 generally excluded.
Again, it really just depends on what applications come in.
Okay, thank you.
I can't think of anything recently that we funded over 30,000, but I don't know that we've had a ton of applications with, for cities larger than that right now. I will say that this, I think, is going to be a pretty competitive round. So we'll just have to kind of see what happens.
Thank you. What evidence will you be looking at for document developer equity?
All we need for developer equity is just a commitment letter, basically, backing that up, and that's part of the points piece of it, but then also just knowing that there is some sort of commitment in place to provide those funds. So you're just, when you look through the checklist and it talks about commitments, we're just basically looking for a letter from the developer signed by the authorized signer, stating the the terms and conditions of the funds that are being provided.
So I have another one. What will determine whether a grant or a deferred loan will be awarded to a specific project? Should our application specify this, or is that a decision made by MHFA?
That is your decision, and there is a question on the application and narrative asking you to specify which one you'd like.
Is demonstration or proof of income to pay estimated rent considered a restriction? For example, proof of income can pay for monthly rent? Question mark.
I think what you're asking me, like you're verifying income, but you don't, if you're verifying income to pay rent, you're verifying that a person has enough income to pay rent, that is fine. I mean, I think that would be part of a normal application process and review, like kind of credit review when you're applying for apartments. What would not be okay is if you had specific income restrictions you were making sure someone met to be able to rent the unit. So hopefully that answers that question. It's fine to make sure they have enough income to rent the unit, but it is not okay to have income restrictions set on the units, on all of the units is what I should say. We do allow income restrictions on a portion of the units.
Thank
But
you.
those need to be really set in place from another program, you know, whether it's like TIF or tax increment financing or some other financing that you have that would trigger those requirements.
Thank you. Rob, if that doesn't answer your question, or if you're looking to get different information, you can always reach out to Sarah directly. Or actually raise your hand and we can call on you and we can have a dialogue now if you'd like. Okay, so Rob says thank you. Looks like you did a good job answering that. The municipality decides if it is, oh yes, so we just had a comment on whether the person, the applicant decides whether it's going to be a grant or a loan. Okay. I think that's about it. Gail has a question. We can unmute her. Gail, go ahead and ask your question.
That would be good. So if
oh, go ahead. Or do you want me to repeat it?
okay. Okay. Then I probably will communicate with him that we want to sign the letter and we'll offer to send it for him if he likes.
I think she must not have realized that we have her unmuted. We will move on. She did have a question. Can a percentage of a development be income-based? Any guidelines on that?
Percentage of development fee?
Yeah, can a percentage of a development be income-based? I'm not quite sure where that is. She had asked this question, so that's why I called on her, but she must be on a call.
So yes, we do allow for a percentage of the units to have income restrictions. I think that's what she's asking. And there's additional information on that within our program guide. I think it's about page 17.
Thank you. No further questions at this point.
All right, thank you, everyone.
You get a half an hour free. Looks like Rob has a question. Rob, I have you unmuted. Feel free to unmute yourself.
Yeah, my question, I'm not sure if you're seeing my questions or not, but my question is this. Is this both for new construction or can it also be used to recommission or a building or to be turned into housing or a school building in rural Minnesota? And also my second question is, does this cover assisted living facilities? It probably does not, since it says working families.
Yeah, so it doesn't cover assisted living facilities since it is workforce housing. Typically, that would not fall into this bucket. But if you have, you know, something that you think would, feel free to reach out to me and we can discuss that further. And then with regard to the question on rehabbing units. So we do allow acquisition rehab as long as you're creating new units. So it would be
Gotcha.
either new construction or like, yeah, refurb or, you know, refitting a new or an old schoolhouse or some sort of old building would be fine.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Sarah, we have no further questions.
All right,
We have
thanks
about
everyone.
35 people here, so we could probably just free everybody up.
All right, any
Can I
other
ask one
questions?
Rob has one
Can
more.
I ask you one more question? If we're not on the opportunity zone, because we're such a small little town, we should be, because we're in an economic development area, but we're not on that opportunity zone. How do we get on that list? Is that through deed?
Yeah, I would look at the deed website. I don't know that I have no idea how you would even go about doing that, but I would look at the deed website and, you know, you can just search for opportunity zones and look at the information there and reach out to someone at deed if you have questions on that.
Gotcha. Thank you.
No further questions. Sarah, why don't I do this? If people still want to ask questions, we can let everybody go, but if they want to ask questions, they can feel free to type it in the questions box, and we're logging all of those, so then we can do follow-up later on. But to make the best use of all of our time, let's just go ahead and finish up. But I'll leave the lines open for you to ask questions on the questions feature box, if that's okay.
Great. Okay, I don't see anything else coming in at this point, but just want to thank everyone again for joining us. And like I said, feel free to reach out if you want to connect with me separately on a specific project or talk more about scoring, any of that stuff. You have my email address and my phone number. Thank you so much. Have a good day.